Well, welcome everyone to our March Masterclass. The topic today is distributions. This is definitely in the advanced category, and we'll get into why. And it's a really powerful concept that not all of our clients are using yet, but we think a lot of you can benefit from. So hopefully all of you that are here are curious and can find some value in this. We're going to start. Well, I should start introducing myself. I'm Fred Willerup. I am CTO at LeanLaw, responsible for product development, and Chase.
I am Chase. Yes, I'm the customer success manager here at LeanLaw.
Right.
So my responsibility is. They don't let me touch the product here. I instead get to deal with all of you through intercom and chatting with you throughout the day.
So we have monthly masterclasses. If you haven't been in one of these yet, we even though it's a webinar, which means that you're not able to speak and share your video, we still really would like this to be interactive in the sense that put any questions you have in the. Do we recommend the questions tab or the chat?
Yeah, the QA is a lot easier.
And so we will often answer those live and make it interactive that way. If we don't get to your question, be assured that we'll get back to you afterwards, even though that's rare. We do cover almost all the time all the questions we have. So this is a chance for you to get more value out of LeanLaw. Is really kind of the high level idea. I'm going to kick us off today by, normally we jump right into the product and start clicking buttons. And I think we're going to do it a little differently today. We're going to kind of spend a little more time explaining the concept. I'm going to jump on a virtual whiteboard and kind of explain what's going on to kind of just get the concept of distributions across. And then Chase is going to follow up with some button clicking and show how this works in the product.
Yes, for all you whiteboard enthusiasts out there, your time is now. This is the webinar for you.
This is also a little bit of an experiment, so we'll see how it goes. But let us know if this was this way of doing it and getting kind of concepts and value across to you, whether it was valuable or not. We're very curious if this how this works compared to the usual way. So let me jump in. I mean, I want to say first of all. Chase, do you have anything to add before?
I was going to say let's start with the slides so we know what we're actually going to talk about today.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Do that whole thing. Get that moved over. There we go. Fantastic. Is it showing the whole screen?
Yes.
Perfect. All right. So focus today is distributions, as Fred discussed. Three main things we're going to talk about: what is a distribution conceptually. It's what we've got the whiteboard for. Automating compensation, partially what distributions are, and then actually managing those distributions once we've created them and what that looks like in your firm. And that's my slideshow.
Nice. All right. So I'll kick us off here. First of all, high level, distributions are really there to help you pay your attorneys. That's sort of very high level what this is about. You get paid by your clients, and then now you want to distribute the loot, so to speak, or pay your attorneys and your employees. And there's some reporting bits involved here, some workflow bits, and also we're really excited to announce that we're gonna add additional automation to the distribution itself, where you're paying your attorneys. So that's kind of high level what this is about. One thing to note, it's a pro only feature. So if you're following along here and you're not seeing some of what we're looking at here, it could be because you're in our core product. And so, hopefully you'll still follow along and maybe get inspired to upgrade to Pro if you think this is valuable. The other thing I want to sort of highlight is for really, really small firms, like certainly for a solo attorney and very small firms, this probably is not going to be relevant for you. You're of course welcome to sit along, but this is geared towards slightly more complex firm setups. So just wanted to highlight that as well, so you don't waste your time. All right, let's do it. So I'm going to start with my my whiteboard here, which I teed up with a little calendar, a little timeline here. Distributions is all about taking payments you receive from clients. So have payments coming in throughout the months, which we can illustrate with these circles. I have small payments, bigger payments coming in. They come in at different times throughout the months. There might be a big payment here, some smaller ones, and so forth. So this is kind of the cash flow of the company illustrated within these little circles here. And each of these payment represents some dollar amount of some kind coming in. Now, in a nutshell, go ahead, Chase.
I was going to say something that's important to remember here is just because you submit an invoice in a month does not mean you'll necessarily get paid in that month, especially if you're not using trust. Pretty frequently, you'll submit an invoice, and then 45 days later, the client finally pays you. And I want to say that because these are all specifically about payments. Now, there are associated invoices, and we'll get to that a little bit later. But the dates that these come in, this timeline is based on when the payment comes in and when it's received by the firm, not when it was originally submitted to the client as an invoice.
At the fundamental level, a distribution is really just a way to put like a box around these payments. So I might say, I want to handle all these payments and then distribute them to my attorneys. And I might call this the March distribution. So this is March 22. That's my March distribution. Now, why is that useful if I just draw boxes around individual months here? Well, what we've found is that in a real life situation, your distributions don't necessarily happen on exact month boundaries. Like, for example, here in April, we might start drawing a box around the April distributions and get ready for that. But then a huge payment comes in May. And we don't want to wait distributing that to the attorneys and just kind of sit on that payment for a whole month until we get ready to distribute in June. No, we might draw a line around all of these payments because this happened early enough that we're ready to include that payment in the April distribution that we're preparing here.
Because
so
Dave,
that,
because Dave, the attorney, is in the back saying, it's my money and I want it now. I'm not going to wait until the end of May to get this $10,000 payment today.
Right. And then, we can draw a little box around the remaining distributions once we get to June here, and, so forth. So this is in a nutshell what distributions are. They're really just a kind of box around payments that you want to handle and distribute to your attorneys.
Now, Fred, why couldn't we just use like the time period filter to sort these out?
Right. We can, but there are two problems with that. The problem that we just ran into here, that we want to include this big payments that's not happening on a clean time boundary. And then also remembering, like we're going to be showing additional workflow around this, remembering that we included this payment in the April distribution is very problematic. And so remembering that, okay, for this distribution, we have to set the date filter to just this smaller time period.
Yep.
Drawing a box around the payment allows us to be sure that we've handled the payments coming in and that we can distribute them to our people.
Exactly.
So I'm going to draw a little legend here. It's kind of lame, but
nah, it's important to remember.
Okay, so these are the distributions. Okay, so what's next is also another concept that you might be familiar with already from our reporting. Let's make that yellow. Now, as Chase mentioned, these payments, they relate to some invoice that was billed in the past. So this payment here is related to this invoice. We might have attorney A working on it, attorney B, attorney C worked a certain amount on this invoice, and we send it to the client, and it was a certain dollar amount here. Now, what we do is we take each payment and we split it up like a pie. We say A gets this much out of this payment, B gets this much, C gets this much, and then there might be some expenses. And then we take all these payments and split them up. A worked on this one, B worked on it, C might not have worked on it. So all these payments get split up. This is what we call an allocation, and we can see this in the product later. But each payment has an allocation, which is basically the idea that the payment is split up between different people and buckets, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when we report on this, what we're going to do is, if we're looking at reports, we're taking all these little pie slices here from all the payments belonging to a distribution. And then we're showing a summary of this. We're saying A, B, C, maybe some expenses, and we're calculating the totals here. This A gets to 20,000, B gets something, and so on. There's these dollar amounts here that add up to the totals of all these payments. We'll see later in the product how you can see how individual payments are split up. But we'll definitely be looking at kind of this total here, which is what we in the product call the compensation report. When you go to the compensation reports, that's what that is. We take all the payments and we split them up between the different people needing the money. Now, there's a lot of complexity here that we can talk about, and please feel free to ask questions regarding origination and how we calculate these payments. So we have features in the product where somewhere out in your firm settings, let's just draw it with red here. There's certain origination percentages and various settings of various kinds. I'm just drawing it kind of in an abstract way here that affect how we split up these pies. So we can talk more about that, but that's sort of the general concept.
So I've actually just posted the masterclass where we covered a lot of the detail or the nitty gritty on the revenue reports. And interestingly enough, we actually talked about distributions in that masterclass. So that's in the chat for everyone. Actually, just kidding. I sent that to just hosts and panelists. There we go. So that will help explain or illustrate the red lines there that Fred is talking about with those revenue allocation settings, because that is another layer within the payment or within the distribution rather, which we spend a whole nother hour talking about. But it's important to understand that the distributions are affected by that because they're made up of payments. And so the allocation settings you have set up are locked in when you save that distribution, meaning that if I go back, if I'm changing revenue allocation.
I will get to that.
Spoilers.
That gets a little, yeah. I want to kind of complete this picture before we address that more sort of advanced concept. Now, this is not in the available yet, but we're actually in sort of alpha testing with this at the moment, and in the process of developing this feature, which I'm really excited about. We are developing the ability to take these reports and push this over to QBO, so that you in QBO will have basically a bunch of bills for each attorney. So here's attorney A with a 20K bill, and there's one for B and C as well. So we're developing a feature where you can take these reports and push them over to QBO automatically, so you don't have to do this manually every month or every pay period. And this creates bills in QBO that can then be paid by the firm. So this creates full circle. You receive the payments from the client, they build up. You use this distribution feature to circle payments that need to be sent to clients. You review them and to employees and attorneys. You review them with reports in the firm, and then you push a button to send it to QBO to be distributed to the attorney. So this is sort of what's next with distributions that we're really excited about. Any questions coming up so far, Chase?
I don't see any yet, but I do want to say part of what is really exciting about this to me is, in the same way that we wanted to simplify and speed up the trust accounting process within a firm, recording deposits, payments, getting paid, making that a really easy process. This is the same thing, but another step past that. Well, now you've gotten paid, how do we very quickly do the necessary reporting, allocation, and ultimately paying our people faster? And as soon as we can send that off to QuickBooks and have it create those checks that we then print and we're done, that's so much time that you cut off of your compensation or your payroll at the end of the month. LeanLaw's already done it for you. You issue the checks, you're done, right? You've got your reports backing all this up, and that way you're not jumping into QuickBooks and looking at things. You're not having to figure out and write checks for it. It's all done each step of the way. So by bringing all of that into LeanLaw, your process now, on top of being faster, is all in the same place. You don't have to jump around to different places, compare different reports. It's all right there for you.
I'm just finishing the legend here. So this black last bit, we're just going to call awesome. There's a question here from Paul. Thank you. Will there be an opportunity to modify the report or the bill to account for firm overhead? And the answer is yes. We already have inside of these settings, and we can show it once we switch over to the product here to just kind of quickly highlight it. There's a way in here in the firm settings to set a firm, it's called firm
share, I
firm
believe.
Share.
Yeah,
firm share. And so you can set 20% in here for the firm, and then we take that out of these pies up here automatically, and everything works downstream. Now, there's one final thing, which is what Chase was getting into earlier, and I shut you down, Chase, which is the distributions have a state associated with them. They start out as drafts. So, this distribution is a draft, etc. God, I'm having a little trouble writing legibly. So once you send the stuff to QBO, or if you manually change the state to what we call distributed, so there's another state here that marks this as distributed, we will bake in the current settings we'll basically take a copy and put all these percentages and all these settings out here inside the distribution, so that these numbers don't change.
Yep.
So that when you get to April and May, and maybe in June, you're going to change the firm share to 25%, so that doesn't affect these previous distributions. So that's what Chase was getting at earlier. So conceptually, your settings get frozen into the distribution once you change the state here.
Yeah, it's kind of like rubber stamping that distribution. Like, hey, this is, at the time,
Approved.
This is what right, approved. And here's why, right? The terms of that distribution, so that when you're doing your 6-month review of allocation, someone wants to go from 10% to 15%, it doesn't go back and mess up all the distributions you did for the last year and a half. It's only affecting things that are still in that draft or haven't been assigned to a distribution yet.
Right. I'm thinking, Chase, unless there's questions, and we can always return to this picture if there are questions that would be helped by this. We should get away from my illegible scribblings here and then go to the product and have a look at what this looks like in the product.
I'm going to take away your crayon. I'm taking away your crayon and
Okay.
you're not allowed to write anymore on the walls. We've talked about this. Karen asked, how are allocations for write-offs handled? Need to be able to say that a write-off should be assigned to a specific timekeeper.
So write-offs at the moment are really handled as essentially a lack of payment on that invoice. So write-off is, if we have an invoice for $10,000 and different people are working on it and there's some expenses, the write-off is equivalent to a partial payment on that invoice. And we pay off expenses fully first, and then we proportionally distribute the remainder onto each attorney that's involved. We do not currently, we are aware of this as a feature request that we would like, or some of you would like, the write-offs to be directed towards specific users on that invoice or specific line items. We don't support that today, just to be very clear. But we're aware that this is a need. So I just wanted to explain how write-offs work today, and that we have some work still to do there.
Yeah, and I think actually we'd got a request yesterday from a user on setting revenue allocation on a per user basis, but with percentage. So instead of
yeah. We're getting into the kind of weeds of allocations here, but yeah, what you're referring to there is that we have the ability to freely allocate fixed fees to different attorneys, including by percentage. And we have some other ideas there that would be awesomer down the road. But yeah, we can maybe when we show the product, keep those questions coming if you want to see some of that detail around how you control how you control the pie slicing, I guess, is really what we're talking about here. And we have a lot of those mechanisms in place, but not all. So we'd love to hear from you what's needed here to fully automate your firm's distributions. All right, go ahead, Chase, I think.
All right, let's go take a look at QuickBooks. No, not at QuickBooks, at LeanLaw. All right, should be able to see my screen now. So this is the QuickBooks tab, really the billing page in LeanLaw that we all know and love. And you'll notice next to the QuickBooks tab up here, there's distribution. Now, if, like Fred said, if you're a pro user or pro firm, you'll already see this right next to trust account, but you might not have ventured in to take a look at what's going on here. So I'm going to use Fred's illustration as kind of a reference and then talk about what each part of what we're seeing in LeanLaw is what we drew over on the whiteboard. So timeline is the timeline is conceptual, right? The theory of time. We're going to ignore this time period filter over here, and we'll go ahead and just set that to all time. There we go. Look at that. Look at all these payments. We got 9 pages of payments, and those are those blue circles that he drew on that timeline, those little dots, and they're on different dates throughout time. So we've got them going all the way back to 2020. If we flip that, we've got some recent ones too, but we want to allocate these. We want to include them in a distribution, right? We want to draw that box or that container around them. How do we do that? Well, in classic LeanLaw fashion, we've got the checkboxes over on the right here to select those. And if we go down to the bottom, we've got the option to create distribution, assign to an existing distribution, or remove from a distribution. So creating a distribution or assigning would then draw our little box around them. So let's say, for example, I'm going to do a custom period just so we don't have to look at everything. We will do Q1. So everything from January 1st to the end of March. We'll flip that back. So I want to take everything in January. So I'm going to go through and select all of those payments. There we go. Oh my goodness, we got paid a lot in January.
How about the select all button there?
I could do that, but then it would include February and March, and I don't want that.
Oh, I see. Sorry.
Yeah. Yep. All good. I do, however, want to include this $4,000 payment that we got at the end of February, because the attorney that got paid, the attorney responsible for that wants to get paid. So we'll include that one as well. Then I create distribution. Now the regular status is draft, much like a draft invoice. That's just the holding. It's not distributed. We can still review it, make changes. So we will pick draft. And I can date that today, that's fine, but we're going to call that January 2022. Even though it includes a bit of February, this is part of our, going back, and now we're actually processing these. Go ahead and save that. Great. So now when I select the distribution filter at the top up here, I can now select January 2022. And it looks like someone ran a distribution for this month already. So we've got all of these. Now let's say, for example, I actually want to, let's set that not in distribution. There we go. Oh no, there's two payments here that I forgot. And there's a $15,000 payment I really do not want to forget. Pretty much the same process, select the two payments and assign to payment. We've now just widened our little circle there, or our box like Fred drew, to now include these other payments in that distribution. There we go. So what does the status filter here do? Well, when we're looking at the distribution page, pretty similar to lots of other pages in LeanLaw, much like the invoices page, we've got the distribution column here, which tells us which distribution, if any, the payment is part of. So by selecting that distribution filter up top, we can set that, or filter by status, whether it is included in one at all, which means it would be blank, if it's in a draft, or if it's already been distributed. Because again, we don't want to accidentally include payments that have been already distributed in another distribution. That's the whole reason we're using distribution instead of just a time period to fit these in. Now, Fred, can I assign a payment already on a draft to a different distribution?
Give it a shot.
All right, let's pick in draft. We will select, let's bump this back to December, see if we can grab some December payments. There we go. We'll take these, and I'm going to assign to distribution and reassign to the new one we just made today. There we go. Now, I can do that because they're in draft still. But if it is distributed, looks like nothing's actually been set to distributed. If it wasn't distributed, I cannot do that, right? We've locked it. We've said no more readjusting the boundaries. You can't widen this, the box or make it thinner. That's that. It's done. It's shipped. It's out the door.
Right. Sorry, I wasn't sure what you were getting at with your question.
Yeah.
But yeah,
no, you got it.
I should have included that concept on my drawing that when you move it to distributed, it not just locks in the settings, but you can no longer move payments in and out of it. Fairly important to understand. Thank you. There is a question from your namesake, Chase, and from Eileen. The question is, can we take a payment and control whether the payment is applied to expenses or the fees of an invoice? And the answer is no. We will always allocate to expenses first, and then allocate to services afterwards. So that's currently not something you can control. But it's, we've noted it as a suggestion, so thank you. I haven't heard that need before. And then we have a question from Anne. How do you handle payments that are adjusted after distribution have been made?
And Anne is asking the questions I've been asking. So good on you, Anne.
Right. So you can move payments in and out of distributions and edit, modify them in QuickBooks, even remove them completely if they were not correctly put in there, as long as the distribution is still in draft. So the answer really is, as long as the distribution is draft, you can fiddle around with which payments are included and what specifically they are concerned with. So, go ahead.
So I was going to say on that topic, I'm flipping one of the other distributions here to the distributed status, and the little helpful message here says preventing payments from being added or removed and locking its allocation values. So I believe actually that once it's been distributed, we're not able to make changes to that, correct? Right. Or can we update the? Okay, so we can change it back to draft.
Right. So one thing to maybe add here is this page is typically used, it's the operator in the firm, or the attorney will typically not be doing this. It's one person in the firm that manages this. And maybe as a side note here, Chase, go to settings and permissions real quick. Mm-hmm. There's a setting under permissions here under billing at the bottom there that allows you to say, hey, attorneys and principals, I'd probably uncheck principal there, but maybe you're a principal.
I am a principal, yeah.
But I think I would recommend in most firms that this is only available for operators, and one person does this. And we'll see later how the attorneys get, or maybe we'll see next how the attorneys and everybody else in the firm can see the output of all this. Maybe we should move to the reports, Chase.
Yeah, we can do that. Looks like Linda's got a question for you.
So the question is, if they create bills, if you can edit them to pay Blue Cross or expenses out of the distribution at the bill level. Okay, I think it was an answer for that other question. I think I'll have to process this one a little bit. I'm not totally sure.
Okay. She asked a follow-up question. I think that makes a little bit more sense. So if let's see, and if you put it as distributed and it creates a bill, can we delete the bill and they show up in draft? So asking if you delete the payment, right, does it then show up as not part of the distribution, or as does it revert back?
Let's be clear. I don't think we're talking about payments here. We're talking about bills. So I think we're talking about that final bit that we haven't shown yet, where the distribution is pushed to QBO as bills. What happens if we undo those bills? Actually, we're in the process of developing this, and I'm making a note here. I don't think we've considered that case where you actually delete the bill in QBO. We will be adding some ability to undo sending these to QuickBooks, but anyway, thanks for that question. I'm not answering it clearly, but we'll follow up.
All right. So we mentioned briefly a little bit earlier about the implications in reporting. Obviously, if we're doing stuff in LeanLaw involving money, we want to have reporting visibility on it. What does that look like? Well, if it has to do with revenue and payments, it's probably going to be in a revenue or a compensation report. So let's look at one, specifically the by user compensation report. Now you'll notice on the left here, the biggest change on this page is we now have a distribution filter. That's kind of weird. And then when we click it, we can't use a time period and it fills in with distribution. The reason we do that is because instead of saying, hey, let's look at everything for February, let's look at the compensation report or the distribution that included all of our payments for that period, right? So instead of, so you don't accidentally double account for things, you're specifically looking at that box you drew, not the time period that it came in. Did I say that right, Fred?
Yeah, I mean, just to put a little more sort of clearly, I guess, you either have to pick, once you pick a distribution filter, you can't pick a time period and vice versa. So,
right.
So if you're using distribution, we've actually considered even removing the time period filter here if you are using distributions, because it can be confusing and very problematic if you accidentally think, hey, let's just look at February to see how much I made in February. And and those might be a different set of payments than the ones in your February distribution, like Chase just explained.
Yep.
So yeah, just to if you're using distribution, you have to train your attorneys to always use the distribution dropdown here. That's the implication. So what are we looking at here once we pick a distribution?
So we're now looking at the compensation report, specifically only the payments included in that distribution. So if I just set the time period for January feels like so long ago. If we look at January, this is a very different report than if we looked at the compensation report or if we looked at the distribution for January, because the distribution for January included like another $30,000 worth of payments that came in February. It's not the same report, right? And that's why we want to use the distribution instead of time period filter. So that's what we're looking at here. The pies that Fred was talking about, this is where we start to see those slices of pie. Now this is at the firm level for the entire distribution, but we see, taking myself as an example here, that of the payments collected for that distribution, this is now what my compensation looks like for that distribution.
Yeah, and we won't go into a lot of detail here unless we get some questions, but it's we've covered this in other webinars, this particular report and all the options for origination and so on. The short version here is that it's the adjusted share. That's the column that we end up paying the attorney. They worked a certain amount on the invoice or the in that time period. They get some origination and firm share deducted, and then they might get origination added, and in this case there's a referral column, and it all adds up to this adjusted share total at the end. That's the sort of net payout. So yeah, we can. I think it would be helpful maybe just to drill into one of these, Chase, and show the allocation detail.
Yeah.
Just because that is so useful when you're looking at this and you're like, Frederick, why does he get 20K? That's weird. Let's drill into Norm there. There's 3,000. You drill in all the way to the payment here. There's a certain invoice, a payment. And if you want to understand why we arrived at this adjusted share of 3510, you click the three dots over on the right there and then use allocation detail. This is basically showing the pie. Like, remember I drew the little pies in, in my scribble? This shows FRT, JP, worked a certain amount, and there's a share and an origination and so on, and these and the totals. So this should give you the little pie breakdown. You can also see this over on billing and distributions under individual payments. This is also helpful over there. And so just on any given payment there, you get that same function over there and can see that breakdown. So it's really critical, especially if you're setting this up and adjusting settings and so on, that you're comfortable and confident in the numbers and that the settings are correct for your firm and that you understand why the numbers are a certain way. So this helps you with that. Especially like there's one corner case here that throws people off, sorry, throws people off a little bit. I'm not from around here. Which is if you have partial payments. So you might have a big invoice in January, the client paid partially in February, and then in March paid the remainder. And it can be really confusing in March why a certain invoice is distributed a certain way. And that allocation detail will show you the full context of partial payments for that particular invoice. So just throwing that out there.
And to add to that, if you're ever unsure about how you arrived at a number, kind of like what Fred was saying, drill down as specific as you can get, look at that allocation detail, and that will then explain as you come farther and farther back towards the surface, how you got to that number. So just because the number seems whack and off in left field, if you drill down and look at it, LeanLaw will tell you how you came to arrive at that number.
One thing, I don't know if you're planning on going here, Chase, but maybe head back to reports. We were looking at the compensation report by user. This gives you the full picture of the entire firm. So, typically the managing partners and so on can see this, the full distribution for the whole firm. Now, in many cases, this you don't want this to be available to everyone, but you do want each individual attorney to see their numbers. They see their numbers in the My Compensation report, which is down under My Reports. This is the exact same thing as going to the compensation report and then drilling into an individual here. But it's just like, so Chase can see this report directly down there. And you can control the access to these reports if we're just, since we're here, go back to permissions under reports. So the revenue by attorney report, we need to rename that to compensation report here. You can make that overview report not available to anyone but the managing partners, but still make the My Revenue report available to attorneys and paralegals and whoever needs it. So an important detail in sort of depends on how open your firm is, what you want to do here.
It saves a lot of time. Instead of having to print one huge report for everyone and then emailing it out, you can say, hey, if you're interested in learning about your compensation this month, go check the My Compensation, because it's only showing their information. They get that report curated to them without showing them information for other users or other matters that you might not want them to have access to, saving you a lot of time.
All right, we have 15 minutes left. I think, Chase, do you have more to go through here on the sort of how to section?
Not really. It's pretty darn simple once you understand the conceptual whiteboard of how it works.
Right.
LeanLaw is just a couple of buttons, and knowing what your workflow looks like, and then executing on that.
I want to add one thing. We were talking about the distribution locking. So Chase showed that, you change something to distribute it, and then, the percentages and so on are locked in. There's also another thing that's really useful here that gets locked in, which is the, who is the originator on a matter that goes into these reports. If you go to matters and open one, you can see here that we have a checkbox, and we have two in this case actually, under origination, and we even have like some sharing of the origination between several people here. We've had some situations in firm where maybe a partner retires and somebody else takes over a client, and so the originator changes. But we don't want, payments coming in from the past to, we want that still to be to the original originator. So just letting you know that also gets locked in to these reports. The fact that somebody is an originator on a matter is locked in along with the rest of those settings. Yes, so I got this perfect segue here. I'm going to take over again. Somebody asked, okay, enough of this already. How do you send them to QBO again?
Show me the good stuff.
So how do you do this awesome bit down here, where we're looking at the reports and then sending them to QBO? Well, it's not available yet. We are working on it, and we're actually interested in people willing to help us test this and adjust this. I can show you I was hoping to show an actual demo, but I'm going to be just showing a sort of a prototype here instead. What we're going to be doing is we're going to, this is the current page that Chase showed. We have payments, we can assign them to distributions and remove them. We're going to add a distributions option over here on this page, where you can see each of your distributions more clearly in a list with totals and so on, their statuses. When you click into them, you now can see the breakdown. So this is basically bringing that report that we had to go to reports to find, bringing that right in here. So you can see these numbers in here and validate them. And then you click this send to QuickBooks right here, and it sends it over to QuickBooks. I can't show it live right now, but if we go over to QuickBooks, I kind of teed up an example of what it would then look like in QuickBooks. The attorney would be a vendor. We'll have the ability to map your users to vendors in QuickBooks. And then you will have a product and service settings on an account setting here that we go against. I called it attorney compensation here. This is the March 22 distribution, and then the amount. So this is what it will look like. And we're looking for input, not just on and help testing out some of these things if you're interested. But one of the things, we validated with several firms that work with us that this is the right transaction to push over here, but you could potentially do it other ways as well. But this is what it would look like. Please let us know if you want to help us test this and get some early previews of this. I expect that we're actively, or have been actively working on this. I expect us to release this in the next, I would just say conservatively, the next month. So let us know if you want to help with that, or if you want some early access.
To add to that, this is an opportunity that if this is something your firm, whether it's a firm as a client or the firm you actually work in, if they're going to be using this is an opportunity to voice your opinion on, hey, my firm's going to need this. Can we consider this now instead of when we start using it? Because it's a lot easier to get stuff rolled in and added in here to this when it's in the prototype and the early stages. So if you're even at all interested a little tiny bit, I absolutely suggest contacting us and letting us know that you're interested.
All right, we have another question. Would the bill be able to separate the compensation and any reimbursed expenses? Yes, actually, that's a good question. We actually have built in the ability to, I didn't show this, but the ability to separate the distribution of expenses or origination or other components of distribution and create separate bills for it. But I think what you're really asking is that, and go ahead and confirm in the question box, are you saying that the expenses need to go against a different account here so that we can keep, well, I messed it up here, so that we can keep track of and account for it differently in the chart of accounts, expenses and so on? Is that the question? Let's see, while we wait for that to come in. Okay. So there was there's a note here. Yeah, we need that because we don't have this particular category. Maybe I wasn't clear. There will be the ability to map. You will be able to pick which category that these transactions go against. So you will be able to use your own accounts here. I guess I was trying to get some clarification if we need to have different accounts for expenses and different accounts for attorney compensation. Okay, I got a confirmation that yes, that's what we would like. Okay, that's excellent input. And then we have a question about classing. Andy asks, will the option to sync attorneys in as a class exist? We actually have that already. I mean, for this particular feature, we are syncing them in as vendors. We already, but not related to the distribution feature, we do have a class mapping feature here. Now, I actually turned off classing in my QuickBooks account. Throttle exception. I guess I will. We don't have time to go through this, and something isn't working. But we do have a class mapping feature for attorneys. This really works at the invoice level, not at the distribution level, so that you can map individual line items on an invoice to an class that represents an attorney. So that feature that doesn't really answer your question, but maybe gets you close, I guess. All right. Did I miss any questions here? Suddenly, we had the floodgates opened here, Chase. Did we miss anything here?
Linda has a suggestion on connecting it to a product or item so they can book it under different accounts. I think that's been discussed. I think really the last thing on my list is just talking about the performance updates that engineering's been working on. Yeah, we let's we have 5 minutes left. Keep your questions coming, but I will just talk a little bit about what's next, which is not related to this distributions topic that we now know and love. We have been working on some performance enhancements in the product. We've had especially firms that have a large number of active matters in their system. Some of you have over 5,000 active matters, and this is causing
for some of you, some pretty serious performance problems. We've been working on this, and we're close to releasing something that will address that, at least make it better. The other scenario that we're addressing is if you have a lot of expenses. If again, some of you, especially in contingency firms, have again thousands and thousands of expenses, and my original code didn't quite anticipate this, so we got some good people on the case, and we're going to speed it up for those of you who have thousands of expenses in the system. So letting you know that we're sort of one issue at a time, trying to address some of these concerns that you guys have expressed, that the product is slow in some cases. So we're trying to deal with that, but keep the feedback coming. I mean, we may give you a sort of, hey, we're working on it kind of answer, but it's actually really important for us to know when something is slow and where it's slow. We have some measurement in place, but it's really great to hear from you directly. So it's kind of a frustrating area, but thank you for your feedback there, and we're working on it. It's kind of the answer at the moment.
It's the more specific the feedback we get, the faster and more accurately we're able to assist, whether it's a feature or a bug or general slowdown or something looks weird. The quicker you let us know and the more precise, obviously you're dealing with the support team here. That's my area, but the better we're able to communicate that back and forth between you as the user of the product, the better I can go to Fred and say, hey, Fred, Nancy's seeing this. We got to take care of this, or like 4 or 5 people have reported this. It makes it so much easier for us to then triage it and get that resolved quicker.
Perfect. All right, we're out of time. We don't have a topic picked for next month. We'll let you know what we're doing, or please let us know what you would like us to cover. Also, would love your feedback on how we did it this time. Was it helpful to scribble on a whiteboard? Was this topic even helpful? We're just here having a good time. We appreciate the questions, and think that made the amount of questions maybe is a sign that this is useful. The amount of participants, but if you want, or we rely on you to let us know what works and don't work or doesn't work in this context, so we can make this better. It's really for you we're doing this, not for us, obviously. So
I don't know.
Yeah,
it's
thank you.
Fun to chat
I
with
love
you,
hanging
Fred.
out with you, Chase. Yeah.
Love hanging out with you too. We should work next to each other. I think that'd be great.
Cool. I think we're done. Thank you, everyone. And do you have anything else, Chase? Or are we?
Nope. That's it. That's
Awesome.
it. Thanks, everyone. We'll catch you next month.